Hello everyone, welcome to 11.3 Quadrilaterals. The essential question is, how can you classify and compare quadrilaterals? Now, quadrilateral is a four-sided figure. Make sure you write that down. Also, if you need to screenshot this or write this down, please do so. This is very important. Okay, we have different types of quadrilaterals and there's different properties. Okay, each quadrilateral has different properties that make it a certain classification or certain type of quadrilateral. So let's start with a parallelogram. A parallelogram, the opposite sides are equal and parallel, right? So if you look here, these opposite sides are equal and they're parallel to each other, meaning they will never touch. Okay, either side, they will never touch. Okay, same with these opposite sides. They're parallel to each other. And the opposite angles are equal, meaning these angles here and these angles here are the same, and these angles here and these angle here is the same. Okay, that's a parallelogram. A rectangle. Opposite sides are equal and parallel. So these are equal. That one's equal to that one. This one's equal to this one. And all angles are right angles. Okay? For a square, opposite sides are parallel and all sides are equal. So not only are the opposite sides parallel to each other, but all sides are equal and all angles are going to be right angles. Just like with the rectangle, all angles are right angles. Therefore, we know that a square can be a type of rectangle because a square has all angles that are right angles and the opposite sides are parallel. Now, a square could be a rectangle, but I want you to take a second. I want you to think, why can't a rectangle be a square? And the reason why a rectangle cannot be a square is because a rectangle does not have all the sides that are equal. So a square can be a rectangle because a square has these two things that are the same as a parallel or as a rectangle, right? Opposite sides are parallel, all angles are right angles, but a rectangle cannot be a square because not all the sides are equal. So that might seem a little confusing, and if you need me to break that down a little bit more in class, please write that as a question. Okay, how do you know that a rectangle can be or a square can be a rectangle, but a rectangle can't be a square? Okay. Just remember, for it to be a square, all sides have to be equal. Okay, that's why a square can be a rectangle, but a rectangle can't be a square. Okay, and then we have what's called a rhombus, usually a diamond shape. Opposite sides are parallel, all sides are equal, opposite angles are equal, and that says that diagonals bisect each other at right angles, meaning when you were to crisscross it like that, you would have right angles. Okay? Now, the one thing you need to know too is that a square is a rhombus. A square is a type of rhombus, but not all rhombuses are squares either. What I mean by that is, for something to be a square, you need to remember all angles are right angles, right? Well, that's not the same for rhombus. So while this rhombus right here is a square because it does have four right angles and all the sides are the same and opposite sides are parallel, this rhombus right here that I'm going to show you, this is another type of rhombus. And this is not a square. Even though it's a rhombus, it's not a square because there's no there's no right angles. Not every angle, and none of these angles actually, are right angles. So, while a square can be a rhombus cannot be a square all the time. Okay? A square can always be a rhombus, but a rhombus cannot always be a square. That's one way to put it. And if you have questions on that, please write it down so I can clarify a little bit more. And then you have a trapezoid. A trapezoid is when one pair of opposite sides is parallel. So these two opposite sides are parallel. These two right here are not parallel because eventually they're going to intersect. Okay? They're going to come together. Alright, so here's what you have to do today. And I want you to write down these steps. You need to see how many sides are congruent. What type of quadrilateral is it? How many, or you can just ask, are the opposite sides parallel? Are they equal? Okay. Are there any right angles. Okay? Or you can say, are all angles right angles? Okay? So here's your steps. Go ahead and pause it. But step 1 is, how many sides are congruent? Are the opposite sides parallel? Are they equal? Are all the angles right angles? And then that will be able to help you know what type of quadrilateral is it. So I'm going to go ahead and have 2 examples. Okay, classify the quadrilateral in as many ways as possible. So each one is going to be a quadrilateral, at least for these 2. So this is going to be a quadrilateral because this is a 4-sided figure. This is also a parallelogram because the opposite sides are parallel, right? I see that these sides are parallel and these sides are parallel. Is it a rectangle? Well, no, there's no right angles, which means it's also not a rhombus, or no, I'm sorry, not a square. Is it a rhombus? Well, we can go back to what a rhombus is. A rhombus has 4 sides that are the same, and these sides are the same. And it says that the diagonal bisects would be right angles. Yep, that works. Okay. And it also, we can check to see, give me 1 second, we can check opposite angles are equal, right? So all sides are equal, the opposite sides are parallel, and all angles are equal. So yeah, it is also a rhombus. Okay, the opposite sides are equal, they're parallel. Okay, opposite angles are equal. That is also a rhombus. So it would be 1, 2, these 3 things. Okay, it's not a trapezoid though, because it has more than one pair of opposite sides that are parallel, right? A trapezoid is when only one pair of opposite sides are parallel to each other, like this. Okay, that's typically the shape of a trapezoid. All right, number 2. I know it's a quadrilateral and a parallelogram because the opposite sides are parallel. I know it's also a rhombus for the reasons I told you for example 1, and it's also a square because all the angles are going to be right angles. Alright, so the opposite sides are parallel, the opposite sides are equal, and you have 4 right angles. That's what makes it a square. Alright guys, those will probably be the most difficult examples you'll see when you do your work today. If you have any questions, this might be a little confusing, so please make sure you ask me. And thank you for watching. Have a good one.